Right now, what is on my mind and my agenda is, of course, the big story. And we've been telling you about it this morning. There is a call for the resignation of the mayor of Mandeville because of some comments that he made recently. And as such, the Jamaica Labour Party is calling for him to resign. He has found himself in a position now where he has to be defending his comments on illicit enrichment, seeking to clarify that they were sarcastic and aimed at the Jamaica Labour Party's hypocrisy, as he puts it. He actually criticizes the JLP for sensationalizing his remarks while ignoring their own alleged wrongdoing. And right now, as a matter of fact, I think we have a clip where the mayor made that statement that has turned out to be somewhat controversial. I want you all to listen to it before I bring in my guest, and maybe you can form some kind of an opinion as to how it's said and what might have been meant when Mayor Donovan Mitchell made this comment.
We know, Mr. Chairman, we know if you visit and pass, you can see some of the activities, washing all them boots with Hennessy and all of those things.
Nothing is that wrong with that. Because there's nothing wrong with honest. There is nothing wrong with honest saying well. Sit down.
We know.
Okay, I find it kind of funny. Sit down. Anyway, good morning to you, Marlon. How are you today, my brother, Mr. Morgan?
Hi, morning, Richie. I am doing well. I trust you're good as well.
I am doing well also. I thank you for joining me once again in the big story. And I see where the Jamaica Labour Party, Marlon, is actually calling for the mayor of Mandeville, Donovan Mitchell, to resign based on comments that he made recently at a time when illicit enrichment and words like that are very, very popular in Jamaica, but somewhat controversial. He made a controversial comment, which he's now saying was sarcastic. You don't take his explanation?
Well, I note Mayor Donovan Mitchell's response to the call I made on a particular radio station on Friday for his resignation, and in the absence of his resignation, for PNP leader and President Mark Golding to ensure that he is removed and demits office as mayor of Mandeville and as the PNP's standard bearer in central Manchester. That's a call I am reiterating this morning, because if I were to use a single word, it is a word that would be used to describe both his press release and attempted response that came over the weekend and the statement he made. Totally ridiculous. So in a single word, his very explanation is ridiculous, and it is as ridiculous as the utterance he made, that there is nothing wrong with unexplained wealth. And I'll give your listeners some context, Richie.
Yes.
There are some things that you don't joke around in life, and particularly
Mr. Morgan.
Quite deserving. He came in for considerable flack, and he was raked over the coals for it, because you don't run jokes around those things. So for Donovan Mitchell to expect sensible and intelligent and well-thinking Jamaicans to believe and to take him seriously about saying what he said out of sarcasm, I think it is unfortunate. I think it is ridiculous, and all he has managed to achieve, quite frankly, by his ridiculous response yesterday, is to insult the intelligence of well-thinking Jamaicans and offend our sensibilities as a people.
You take issue with the use of the term unexplained wealth as he used it in that meeting.
That's correct, Richie, and I'll tell you why. We are in a society. I can cite the example of Hanover and Westmoreland. As you can appreciate, these communities were once, relatively quiet parishes in terms of murder tally and outrageous manifestations of violence and murder. What we have seen is that this very harmful and destructive practice of lottery scamming has ravaged, has destroyed the fabric of communities across Hanover and across Westmoreland. And we're seeing ugly manifestations of it in Mandeville. And as the mayor, Donovan Mitchell is supposed to be sober, measured, and responsible. And for him to be indicating at a point in a discussion at the Manchester Parish Council meeting where his colleague councillor, the JLP's Omar Miller of the Cricket Division, was decrying and denouncing the extravagant actions of persons who are suspected to be lotto scammers in terms of washing their boots with expensive liquor and doing all kinds of ostentatious and ridiculous things. Donovan Mitchell responded to that issue as well by saying, nothing is wrong with that, sir. Now, legally, of course, nothing is wrong with washing your boots with any asset that you have. If you have milk or honey, or if it is Hennessy or any other expensive alcoholic beverage. However, most Jamaicans find that to be idiocy and find it to be wasteful, and it is essentially offensive because it just seems nonsensical, especially in a context where people are struggling. But when Omar Miller, Richie, made the point that scammers and persons suspected to be involved in this activity are supporting events in and around Mandeville, and a lot of the violence happening in Manchester as a space is related to the scourge of the lottery scam. Mayor Mitchell responded by saying there's nothing wrong with unexplained wealth and told the gentleman to sit down. So he wasn't even being tongue-in-cheek, and in my view, he wasn't being sarcastic, because if you were just poking or engaging in political banter, you wouldn't have been so aggressive so as to tell your colleague councillor to sit down. So in my view, Donovan Mitchell was clearly offended. He was clearly annoyed by the interventions being made by Omar Miller of the Craighead Division in the Manchester Municipal Corporation. And that is why he said what he said.
Let me indulge you for a moment here now, Marlon, and turn the searchlight back onto the JLP itself. Do you believe that the JLP's stance on unexplained wealth orders regime impacts this controversy in any way whatsoever?
I'm happy you raised this point, and as a person who's transparent by nature and hold myself to account, I welcome the opportunity, to treat with matters and call out matters that are of concern. What has happened in Donovan Mitchell's press release is a conflation of issues. Now, I tell you what I mean by that. The jail, so we have recently been in the throes of an IC report, by the Integrity Commission. They dispatched their report to Parliament, and to the extent that their investigation touched on concern illicit enrichment as a subject matter, that is now the focus of considerable attention in the public discourse. I accept that. It is to be noted, though, that there was no finding. The Director of Investigation at the Integrity Commission established no finding of illicit enrichment on the part of Prime Minister Holness. Now, the PNP in its press release touched on that matter, but they went further and tried to invoke the matter you have alluded to a while ago, Richie, in terms of this whole business of unexplained wealth orders. And just for the benefit of your listeners, unexplained wealth orders are essentially law enforcement related investigative tools to combat the scourge of essentially to counter money laundering, for example. So the idea one has to understand is that unexplained wealth orders, the JLP recognizes, and the government has been at pains to point this out. We recognize the importance of unexplained wealth orders, UWOs, as an investigative tool. We are moving in a direction to institutionalize those and bring them into law. It is just that we are not at a point at present to have unexplained wealth orders rolled out, because there have been technical legal concerns as it relates to bringing to the fore legislation that can pass the standard and meet the constitutional test in terms of the reverse burden of proof that unexplained wealth orders have. So any suggestion by Donovan Mitchell or any other operative in the PNP to give the public the impression that the JLP is against the use of unexplained wealth orders and is against moving as a government to bring unexplained wealth orders legislation to the fore. It's misleading to the public, it is contemptuous of the Jamaican people, and it is just simply inaccurate.
So
we are on record as supporting the call and supporting the move towards having unexplained wealth orders as part of the anti-money laundering regime in this country.
And the stance of the Prime Minister in terms of the case in court does not negate any of what you just said, you don't think?
Well, and I'm happy you raised that one as well, Richie. The Prime Minister, as many members of the public and indeed the listeners may know, has sought to pursue what is referred to as judicial review. The Prime Minister takes exception or takes issue with a number of the findings in the Integrity Commission's report, particularly a number of the observations made by the Director of Investigations in said report. As I said before earlier, there was no adverse finding in that report regarding the Prime Minister along the lines of illicit enrichment. And this, of course, was within a context where the Integrity Commission availed itself of the services of an independent international forensic accounting examiner. So that is like somebody coming in a very intrusive way, pouring over your business affairs, pouring over your personal finances and so on, and that functionary, that accounting examiner did not establish any finding of illicit enrichment. And so the suggestion that the Prime Minister's legal action, his judicial review, to make the very point that there are fundamental flaws with the Integrity Commission's investigation and the fact that the Integrity Commission acted what is called in law ultra vires. That's the effect that the Prime Minister's judicial review has. It is to make the point that the Integrity Commission went beyond and has not carried out its mandate with probity and in a faithful and professional way. Now, there is a suggestion that the Prime Minister is seeking to strike down laws in relation to illicit enrichment, and that is not so, because technically, when an action is being brought by any member of the public, for example, the Prime Minister, you would join the Attorney General of Jamaica as a respondent to the legal action. The Prime Minister in this case has three persons as respondents. The Director of Information and Complaints, Mr. Craig Beresford of the Integrity Commission, the Integrity Commission, and the other gentleman is the Director of Investigation, Mr. What's his name again? Kevin Stevenson. So those are the three respondents to the action that has been brought by the Prime Minister.
Do you think this matter is going to move swiftly through the courts and come to a resolution, even say before the next general election, or you think it's going to drag?
While, Richie, I can't say with any degree of certainty that the matter may be dispensed with or heard in the courts of the land prior to the holding of the next general elections, I am pretty encouraged by how matters have been proceeding in our courts in recent times. You know, we have moved from a situation where we have had considerable backlog and matters going through the courts at snail's pace because of the government's actions and indeed the actions of court administration here in Jamaica, crediting the Chief Justice here, Mr. Brian Sykes. We are encouraged that we have seen more timely dispensation of justice. We saw it a few weeks ago in the case of Adidja Palmer et al., who were persons who brought an action. It came back from the Privy Council to the courts here in Jamaica, and we saw how the appeal court dealt with it with relatively swift dispatch. And so, overall, in terms of Jamaican jurisprudence and how the wheels of justice are turning in recent years, thanks to the JLP and its administration of our affairs and support for the justice system, we are encouraged that this matter should be before the courts and properly ventilated so that we can have a degree of finality and a clear finding from the court on the matter of whether the Integrity Commission erred in certain fundamental respects as it relates to its investigation into the affairs of Prime Minister Andrew Wilson. And
right.
as I said before, we do not take issue with Integrity Commission and its mandate. It was an organization that was set up by the JLP to do what it does in terms of holding public officials to account and fighting corruption. The Integrity Commission, however, is not beyond the criticism where there are legitimate grounds on which to wage those criticisms. That's a simple point we're making.
Got you. So back to the matter at hand, that of the comment from Mr. Mitchell, Mayor Mitchell. How does this seeming controversy now affect the Manchester Municipal Corporation's operations? You think it will affect it in any way going forward?
I think it does, because what you have to appreciate, Richie, is that the Mayor Donovan Mitchell's comments was particularly offensive to many people, myself included, and I'm not the only person. I have been inundated with calls and messages in support of the position I articulated elsewhere in media this past Friday, and I'm sure that my position accords with that of many other Jamaicans, because we appreciate the context within which we're operating here. This morning, Richie, there are many families around Jamaica who are in the throes of organizing night, grave digging, and funerals, because the lives of their loved ones have been terminated, snuffed out, on the back of the dangerous and harmful lottery scamming. And so in terms of Mayor Mitchell and the operations of the Manchester Municipal Corporation, what I will submit to you and the listeners this morning is that the colleagues there, his colleagues, certainly those on the JLP side, they now hold him in lower esteem. The confidence that they may have reposed in him prior to this unfortunate comment this past Thursday would now be essentially diminished, and as such, he would have lost moral authority as the chairman of the Manchester Municipal Corporation, because he came out with a press release, and instead of essentially indicating to the public that he notes that his comments have caused some unease and some disturbance, and as such, he is essentially expressing regret at the comments, he is withdrawing the comments, and then he goes on to explain what he thinks may have caused him to make those comments. Instead of doing that, the gentleman sought to be wrong and strong by indicating that he was basically highlighting hypocrisy on the part of the JLP. That was just setting up a straw man. That was just an exhibition of buffoonery in terms of conflating issues. And I dare say it has no place in public life, and for somebody who is the chairman of a municipal corporation.
Marlon Morgan, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts this morning. Have a great day. Talk again soon.
As always, Richie.
All right. One love. Take care. Yeah, man.